hungry for gold, gotta learn to let it go.
Welcome to Wake the F Up podcast, where we talk about living consciously and helping people uncover their essential selves so that they can stop sleepwalking through life. Welcome to Wake the F Up podcast. I am Alix Long, your host, along with my husband and co-host, Dr. David Long. We are here for part 2 of the 5 steps to heal from loss. We're super excited to have you back today as we dive into the second half of David telling us this personal story. The 5 steps that I've identified are the way to heal from loss. We're focusing on self-love, focusing on going inside, and so let's dive right back in. Okay, so step 4, so they get a little more challenging because this is where it starts to take from survival mode. 4 and 5 is choice.
Yeah.
I find when people get stagnant at the steps, let's say, I'm not going inside. I refuse to feel.
I've heard that.
Yep, I'm done.
Yeah.
I actually said this, which was so crazy. I said, all I'm going to do is work every single day. I'm going to be the best.
Yeah, I was thinking about you when I was talking about my 4 coping strategies and how you really, and I think you were able to do it longer because it was a relatively good coping strategy. Right. Moving your body and instructing, that is a relatively healthy coping strategy. And it really, until we started dating, it was doing relatively well for you. Now, when we were started dating, you were, at least from a third party point of view, on the rapid road to burnout. Yeah.
But faking it greatly.
We would talk on the phone and I'd be like, this level of intensity is not sustainable. But now I recognize that was your coping strategy.
Helping others get healthy, right. I still feel an incredible impassioned fire inside of me to watching your best friend have his entire insides eaten alive by cancer. The most active, energetic person I know, he was on fire for his life. And to watch that energy be ripped from him, it made me even more hungry to keep teaching people how to take care of themselves, because I kept thinking, man, maybe if we pay attention, we can stop this disease state before it begins. Like, could he have recognized his cancer had he have slowed down and paid attention to his body? He was busy in his work, which was a little bit external, right? The repetition piece that I teach, which is classical Pilates, is crucial because that's how when you know sort of your sequencing, that's when you're like, oh, my body, right? You're in your body.
The point is,
I was on fire for my work.
Right.
And it also gave me a method to be alive and empowered and help and feel something and watch somebody else live, even though I was slowly dying.
Yeah, none of that in and of itself is bad. It was just a matter of degree and speed.
Long story short, yes, I needed to go inside. And when I started to listen to myself just like you, I found relief. And then step 4 is really choosing yourself first. It might be a continuity, but it's a conscious. So now we're getting conscious. How did you choose yourself?
So again, I'd give therapy 100% credit for that. It was a natural next thing, but I would have never gotten there without the initial normalization and comfort of therapy. But once the therapy normalized and comforted and
you started to trust.
And I had some tools to actually get through a day. That was a critical part of the initial therapy. Then I started answering the questions that I was asking. Mm-hmm. Who am I? What do I want?
Give me an example of something you chose for yourself that was conscious.
I chose to love again. I knew when I started to ask myself the questions, resounding answer that I continued to have was that I wanted to love and be loved. And pretty soon after that, we met. That was a recurring answer to me, what I wanted and needed. I would have never asked that question before, really. So, yeah,
Does that go against what others were
definitely
thinking you should do?
Definitely, although in their defense, I didn't ask. I never really ran anything by anybody. I was trusting myself. For the first time in my life, I was asking myself what I wanted, answering for myself, and listening to myself, and then doing it.
Choosing you.
Yeah, I had never really done that.
Most of us don't.
I know. I mean, I think a lot of us just live in this kind of codependent haze. and even think it's great that we don't do for
Well,
ourselves.
martyrdom is like,
Right.
you're taught that love is sacrificial,
Right.
and love to some degree does require parental love, especially some sacrificial energy. But I want to remind the listeners out there, if you feel that your love is, and it is work, right? It's communication, and it takes energy. It's energetic explanation. You have to give.
Mm-hmm.
But if it feels like martyrdom, like woe is me, look how hard I'm working, you've crossed a threshold into an unhealthy space. Do you agree?
Yeah. I think that's a symptom of an unhealthy deal. That was the first time that I was really trying to take care of myself. And my therapist made the point that if I don't, like, I'm in therapy, to help with my kids and help with my relationships and blah, 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 blah. That's what I told her, that I was there for. And she just made the point that was very poignant to me, that if I don't take care of myself, that I won't be able to do any of those things. Mm-hmm. And I did feel, particularly for my children, a real deep drive to take care of them. And that probably definitely sustained me for a bit. And I felt that I was unable to do that, and I couldn't do it if I didn't take care of myself. Which I remember explaining that to the kids when we moved here. It was so confusing to them why we had to move, or why are we moving here. I don't want to say they didn't want to move. They did want to move, actually. Interestingly, all of them did, like right away. Within 6 months, we had a little family, like, sit down. There's just all four of us were in the same place at the same time. And I was like, I told them I had been thinking about moving and selling the house. And they 100% jumped on. They're like, yep, let's get out of here. No one said they wanted to stay. Now, one of them wanted to stay in the same town, but he definitely wanted to leave the house. But the other two were like, we can go wherever we want. And
I think you were saying that you're choosing yourself, and that was it was a difference between
right. And so
where you're like taking care
right.
of them.
And when I would explain to them, I was like, hey, this is why I think we need to do this. They understood, that in order for me to help them and to be a good parent for them, that I needed to live the life that I knew that I needed to live. Which
choose you is an active step, okay? And this one requires a lot of, where I reach out if you're looking for coaching of any sort. We'd be happy to help you. And there's a lot of resources out there in this part where you may need some mentorship to get through, like, whoa, I want to make this big decision that's, people always fight against you making any big decisions in the first year after death. I don't know who the hell wrote this magical rule that means nothing. You're going to make all kinds of decisions forced, and some of them will be totally batshit crazy, and you might look back and be like, well, that wasn't that great, but it doesn't really matter. What you're learning to do is trust yourself, and then once you learn to trust yourself, then you're learning to choose yourself. And what choosing yourself means is we've now accepted that we're alone. We've now accepted that we're different. We're isolated. We're not going back. We can't. We've gone inside. We had to be mindful and pay attention, or we would have died or drowned from this grief or shut off. And if you're still out there trying to love and be in community and connection with people, you can't shut off like that. If you've gone inside and decided to shut down, I encourage you to open back up, right? That's not the best sustainable choice. You will get through, I promise. It'll be okay. It's not going to be perfect. You're going to never stop feeling the grief. But you can find healing, resiliency, and love, and maybe not love with another person. Maybe that's not for you, but love for yourself, which will sustain you. And there's so much to life. And I think choosing yourself, one of the most empowering pieces for me, and I'm not sure if it's watching my best friend die so terribly. It's I never want to take for granted that I still have life in me.
Yeah.
He didn't get that choice. Betsy didn't get that choice. We do. We are blessed to be in this space breathing. It is hard every day. Sometimes you want to go up to wherever they are and shake them and be like, you fly down here and deal with this painful thing. But the reality is we are present to all the beauty and all the pain and all the joy of our lives, and it is a gift. It doesn't always feel like that, but it is. And you have to choose you. You get one life. We learned that. And everybody who's lost somebody, who's been through a massive shattering, is aware when you look back and all these regrets and resentment and all the shit that you lived with in the past that maybe you were trying to push away and hide and make better and put under a rug. Choosing you means the outside doesn't understand me anymore. maybe they never really did. They loved you. They loved the you of the then. You're the you of the now. And the truth is, no one can live your life for you, not even your spouse. So you have to choose yourself if you're going to be awake, which is literally the name of our company, and you're going to heal. You have to love yourself enough to say, I am worthy of love. I am worthy of this life. I have life in me for a reason. There's a purpose behind what I am doing, and I have to go inside of myself and choose it. And it's really, really the best gift you can give to your person who's passed away. It's the best gift you can give to your children. It's the best gift you can give to yourself if you've been in a divorce, if you're leaving some kind of abusive situation. Whatever your shattering is, the only way that you can continue is to be alive. And that means you've got to live for you. And the rest of the world would always try to tell you how to live your life.
Yeah, that's a fact.
Yeah.
If you stay quiet, someone will tell you what to do.
So unapologetically, your choice to choosing you was you just started to make choices without anyone else's approval.
That's right.
How did that feel?
It was exciting. There was some anxiety, for sure.
Of course.
But I felt like I remember the first time that I drove to New Orleans to meet you. It felt, it felt like I had never made that drive before, which of course I had driven that drive thousands of times. It felt exhilarating. I was nervous to meet you and see what you were like and all that kind of stuff, and hope that you liked me and stuff like that. But outside of like the normal dating anxiety, it felt really quite wonderful. And there was never a question in my mind that I needed to do it. I knew I needed to do it. I needed to meet you. I needed to talk to you for me.
Mm-hmm. And I actually was petrified of it. I still wasn't necessarily totally choosing myself. I would oscillate between I would choose myself, okay? I would be dead afraid. I would choose myself, but then I would second guess myself.
Yeah.
So that might be like more of a female-minded thing.
I just
like, the voices in my head be like, oh, what if somebody sees me and I don't know, I shouldn't be in love this soon and it's too soon and what, am I crazy? Yeah. Like I definitely second guess and gaslight myself a lot.
No, I've had several major decisions that I've made and since that time without consulting anybody.
Yeah, it's powerful.
Without
self-love and self-trust are the same thing.
Yeah. It was very and still is it still amazes me that that I can do that and that I just never thought that I could before. I never trusted myself to not make a move without just serious consideration. And
don't forget step one, when you've been abandoned and the shattering of the self happens, it is the deepest loneliness you will ever feel.
Right.
And therefore, you actually are really only alone in this world.
Right.
And at that point, you're like, everybody else is never going to get me anyway. And
Right.
so you just make these decisions. It's powerful.
Again, I don't want to, over harp on this and be told to kick rocks again, but I think this is the potential pitfall of over involvement and over planning in your kid's life.
Right. If your kids are your only life or only piece to your life,
right.
They're going to leave at some point, hopefully.
Right. But they might not. So even if they leave physically, they might not leave if you have held such tight control over them that they don't feel comfortable not leaving.
Then something happens to you and then they're in a bed.
Exactly. So, and then you can have a child that doesn't have any skills to trust himself if you have made all his decisions for him his whole life.
Yeah, totally. And this is universal. So again, I'm talking to a griever, talking to a widower, but this is universal for loss, remember. So that's a different podcast for a different day. But I think that it goes really nicely into step 5, which is...
Yeah, well, I think the thesis is that the truth is the grief has nothing to do with the fix, with the solution.
The grief is in you forever.
Right.
It's never going away.
It's just a mechanism for this process. That's it.
It is.
And
you have to consciously choose to take care of yourself and choose yourself first. And
it's frankly a pretty terrible mechanism. Like, it's very painful.
Grief.
Yeah, I would love to find a way to do all of this stuff that we've done without. Yeah.
Agreed.
It's so painful.
And it forces this impassioned belief behind the one life to live and the evaluation of what you have and the gratitude.
It's powerful, meaningful, and probably necessary for a lot of things and a lot of people. but it is extremely painful. Pain like I've never felt before or since.
Well, that leads us to last step. We're running a little long.
Oh, sorry.
No, this is heavy stuff and it's big, so it might be a 2-episoder. But step 5 is return to love.
Yeah, that's a super interesting step.
And actually choosing yourself first, the step prior to that, you chose to love there.
Yeah.
You returned to love in your mind there. How did you return to love? Let's start with return to love to the self, because I think it's important that we don't... It's personal when you want to return to love to another romantic partner.
No, that's what I was thinking as well. I would say that I began to return to love when I started to work through the reasons that I had left the love, inner child work, I guess you'd call it. Mm-hmm. And I mean, maybe some people have to go that far back, but I did. I had to go all the way back to a time when I did trust and love myself. I was very young. And go back to that point and try to figure out what all the forks in the road in your life that led you to be closed off and not available and far into feelings and self-loathing and self-questioning and spending a ton of time inside. Mm-hmm. Spending a ton of time inside and just feeling, this is still a struggle. I mean, it's not like it's over, but just feeling that I'm okay. Yeah. And that
as you are,
that I actually really don't have to do anything. I can just be myself.
And that's enough.
Yeah, I don't have to drink the right wine or be with the right person or make the right amount of money or all that stuff. You can still feel those old pulls, but when you get rid of them, you're left with yourself. And the truth is, you start to see who you really are. And you start to become who you really are even more so, because you are doing your thing, right? And kudos to people that do this from the beginning. So,
self-love is really, really hard.
Yeah, if you could love yourself from the very beginning and then continue that on, that would be amazing. I think it would be extremely difficult, and that's the only reason for that is that as we age, our coping strategies have to change, right? So maybe the coping strategy that got me to where I am right now was not very loveful for myself, and in fact, had I had a lot of love for myself, might have been a negative in certain homes, right?
I don't think so.
It can be.
But I think what you're saying is grateful for where you are today, that the path that you were on, although it wasn't full of a lot of self-love in the early years,
right,
and maybe even prior to Betsy's death.
Well, I was thinking back to, this is like, I don't know if it's relevant at all, but like a gap year, I'm saying that if I would have even questioned that would not have been acceptable. I would never have been able to ask, wait a minute, you know what, I just need a little time, maybe another semester in college or a year between high school and college to at least wonder about what I want to do, mm-hmm. or who I want to be. That was not allowed. That was not.
But that's not you. Had you have chose yourself in that scenario, right, you may have had some rupturing of relationships.
It would have been hard.
I think what you're saying is, man, if I had loved myself enough to take a gap year, mm-hmm. that wouldn't have been acceptable. No. Saying what you needed in your life up until this point has not been acceptable. And actually,
even now, it's not great.
Not acceptable now. Yeah, right, exactly. So if you're out there and you're choosing yourself first, and then you're going to make a conscious choice to return to love. Choosing yourself first is self-care. It is the repercussions and the manifestation and the belief that you are worthy enough. It is the beginning of self-love when you choose yourself first. And whether or not you can say, authentically, that's really hard to be yeah, I love myself. I'm working on that every day. Believing that I'm worthy. But what if we don't say, I love myself completely? We say, I'm going to feel and reach for peace and safety. And when we met, gosh, it was like when we went to the Bahamas, the smell and the vibes of this just island was so chill. Mm-hmm. My life, maybe forever, prior to being with you was 180 degrees away from that feeling that I felt on the island. That's how I felt when I was with you.
Mm-hmm.
It was like my entire person was on vacation all the time.
I felt the same way.
When I got it, it's like when you go on vacation, you're like,
let's just stay here.
Or a retreat. Like, I think people sometimes go on retreat and are like a yoga retreat or something, and you're like, why can't I just live here?
That's the kick. That's
and
the
I
trick.
just couldn't go. I couldn't get. It was like a drug. I couldn't get enough. And what it was it was safety, and it was deep connection. And you saw me, and you made me feel alive and lovable for the, And I was so in self-loathing, and there's a fear when you're in the loss that you'll never be able to love again. And that's why the step 5 is so important, to return to love, because love is while we're alive, I believe. I believe we're here to love. I believe we're here to connect. I believe we're here to energetically love something, someone, something, anything.
Yeah, I'll give you connection for sure. I never believed that before. I thought that actually that was probably false. I thought that actually we were meant to live alone.
Well, and I think it can be love for the self. Like,
yeah,
it doesn't necessarily have to be another person.
But no, I didn't think that connection was a requirement. Now I feel that I was probably 180 degrees wrong on that. But I do think we need a connection, and I think that once you connect with yourself, the connection to the outside world comes like that.
Exactly.
There's no significant transition between you connecting with yourself and connecting with others.
Well, and despite your previous instinct to the purpose of the world is not to connect, there is an extreme amount of science that the purpose of humanity is to connect. And in fact, we are wired for connection.
We're super social.
We're wired for procreation. We're wired for connection. We're wired for sex. I don't know if that necessarily means love. If you're out there and you have lost your person and you're thinking about internally returning to love, and you've done this work, like you're trusting yourself, you're making choices for yourself first, you're going inside, you can't listen to the outside world, but you're too afraid to take the next step because of lots of reasons, right? Like, hey, there's a massive risk you'll lose again.
Yeah, I did think about that.
There's a risk that the person you choose will be wrong and will tell you you're not good enough.
Yep.
Repeat the steps.
I thought about that too.
Go back inside and keep listening to yourself until you get it right, until you believe that you're worthy and you love yourself and trust yourself enough to say unapologetically, I am going to be loved and love in whatever capacity that is. Maybe it's just the self for now, but if it's going to be another person, I'm going to love in the way that the inside of me feels love in full vulnerability, as Brene Brown would say, like where you are fully exposed and yourself. Widows have this curse blessing that it's almost hard to hide anymore because you're too tired. But so you want to love someone who will love you for who you are. Don't go back to hiding patterns and expect the same results. It's not going to happen.
Yeah.
And so returning to love, I'm going to say this, like actually healing from loss, the greatest way once you walk through some of your own healing is to love someone else.
Yeah.
You will never not love the person you lost.
It's the ultimate thing.
It is, and it's the highest expression, I think, of love that you can give your spouse who's passed away, which people will maybe not understand that, but I am saying that I am here to love. I am meant to love. I'm meant to be loved. Carl, thankfully, was such an angel and blessed me with the constant telling me he wanted me to be married again and fall in love again. He wanted me to find someone to share my life with and father our children. And
but even if that didn't happen, it's irrelevant. That is irrelevant.
You can love your person who's passed away. They can continue to influence parts of your life, but again, remember, you've been left by them. There's the abandoning. There's the alone piece. We have to actually separate them from the now. That is the grief. That's the pain. You're not together anymore. And so the admitting of that and the going inside and the learning to trust yourself and then choosing yourself and loving yourself on the last step is myself no longer includes the person I've lost anymore.
Yeah, in fact, and this will probably be very unpopular and you may need to edit the whole thing out. I don't know. But the legacy part of being a widow never felt right for me. It always felt unfair, forced, I felt no choice. they're all very bad feelings. I was like they wanted to put together this scholarship, at the dermatology thing, which is great. I'm for it, but they wanted me to speak at the little fundraiser for it, and I was like, I have zero interest. I am here literally trying to survive and trying to look in the mirror and figure out who the fuck I am, and I do not want to spend 1 minute dealing with the legacy of my dead spouse.
Remember, that's choosing yourself, right? That's going inside. That's listening and trusting yourself.
Right. That's great work for other people, in my mind. That's great work for other people to do.
I think it's
but it's not, in my opinion, and I'm sure there are exceptions. I'd love to hear the exceptions.
There's definitely exceptions.
In my opinion, that is not a great thing for a widow to do. I really don't think it is. Because it potentially could derail.
You had a little bit of friction.
Yeah, no.
Upon the death. And
but you also had problems with the legacy stuff.
Yeah, well, I agree. We have some agreements on that. So I felt like it was challenging for me to do legacy work, although in theory it sounds amazing to do cancer work and all that stuff. But 5 years of caregiving and in cancer world, right. I definitely always reach out and help cancer spouses, anyone who reaches out to me in the cancer journey. I'm always trying to be a one-on-one support system for that because I have a lot of knowledge base. But if we're talking about putting philanthropy to me and fighting cancer from a philanthropic standpoint was not where I felt compelled to put my energy personally. I donate to cancer all the time, quietly, individually, but I felt like the legacy for me was this work, which is I had to go inside. I had to heal myself. I had to become the best version of myself so that I could mother these children.
Yeah, that's the way I felt too.
And I think if you get a lot of pressure to do all this like external appearance that you're like, putting on all these things and it doesn't feel authentic to you, like anything else, go inside, listen to self, care for yourself,
Yeah, so that
choose yourself first. So
I should have actually used that as an example of another instance where I trusted myself. Like, I get this phone call, we'd really love for you to speak at this thing, and we
weren't ready for that.
Raise a lot of money, and I thought about it very briefly, and I was like, nope, that was the right answer for me. I trusted my instincts, even though before I might have just done it, and not wanted to do it, but still done it. I was past that point. At that point, I was listening to myself.
So I think that then maybe we can recant a little bit about some legacy feels really good. Like I have a really good friend whose husband died of brain cancer, and she is doing great things, and I think she finds a lot of empowerment in that. If your spouse dies and you didn't get all the time you wanted with them, and you didn't get the life that you would have had you have known this was coming, and a lot of us feel this regret. Just a gentle reminder.
No, there's that.
I think we're sitting in the seat with David and I, who both had spouses who had jobs that were incredibly impassioned. They were amazing at their jobs, but their jobs took them away a lot, and that you don't want to necessarily go back and be like, I'm going to open a restaurant. That would be the last thing I want to do.
I'd like to hear the stories. I'm curious because I do know some widows do that, and it does seem to help them somehow. I'd like to hear. I'm curious how that it helps them and how that it ends. How after 5 years of philanthropy or whatever, or 10 years or a whole lifetime of philanthropy, does it help? And if so, how does it help?
We're kind of doing a philanthropic thing here. And we actually are using our experiential knowledge to reach out to others who are walking our path. It's a little different, but this is definitely a give back for me. And I feel like getting people healthy and aware of their life and waking up is actually, it's sort of a internal contract for me to Carl. It is my way of helping others, and I wish that I could have known and been a better spouse and helped him to pay attention more so that he could have taken better care of himself. And I don't know if that would have prevented cancer, but my gut instinct would say that had he have taken better care of himself in terms of going inside, as we're talking about, and loving himself, he might have caught this cancer well before stage 4, but maybe not. It was a silent cancer. You just don't know. We talk about this a lot, about Betsy too, and I think I just want to be clear that it's okay that you're upset about that.
I don't feel that way at all.
It's okay that if you don't feel that way out there and you're listening. That's the individuality behind the grief. The steps are a way to build resiliency, and how you choose to take care of yourself first and return to love is so unique, right? It's so unique. And so, yeah, I think it's okay either way. Well, to that end, you want to stump her?
I just disagree. I just don't feel that way.
That's okay.
I mean, I consider philanthropy and legacy work something you do for that person that's dead. And I have a problem with that. I am definitely not here for Betsy. I am here for me and you and whoever's listening, and that's it. And if Betsy were here, I would love to do this for Betsy. But she's not. So I'm not doing this in any sort of way as a legacy or in any way for her.
Well, listeners, I just want to appreciate everyone for...
You can edit that out if you want. I don't care.
We're not going to edit that out at all, because I think this is really important to highlight that when people die, it's an abrupt ending to a life that you had. I'm going to speak on your behalf, which may not be the nicest thing to do. I'm sure we'll get some comments on it. When death happens, it ends, and there's a lot of lack of closure and a lot of doors in marriages. Love isn't perfect. It's not always got a fairy tale ending. It doesn't always have answered questions. There's gray. Anger is a huge part of the grief cycle. And I think that forever there can be pieces of emotionality that you might hold anger with someone that you love who's left you with a lot of unanswered questions and a feeling of wish we could have had more connection, wish we would have had more time. I wish I would have said these certain things. Universally, I think we all feel that way. It's this ugly shit no one wants to hear who hasn't walked this walk. And you can feel his energy if you're empathic. And you can see his energy, that there's some anger still sitting under the surface there. And that's okay, right? Yeah.
I mean, it is what it is.
It is what it is. And we will continue to process alone, which is why self-love is so important, because you can't process a relationship without the other person. And so there's parts and pieces of it sometimes that the only side of loving yourself and processing yourself is to say, we did the best we could at the timeline that we had, with the knowledge that we had. Okay, well, I just want to say thank you so much. These steps aren't easy. As you can see, they drip a lot. And I really appreciate you, David, that was heavy to walk through all of that. And it's really cool that the listeners get to hear your story. And I think you're super brave. And you know how much I love you.
I love you too.
And just because we don't have it all in this pretty picture like social media wants it to be, and we can't memorialize or do things always in this like honoring, right? The pedestaling of our loved ones isn't always easy to do.
Yeah, but this is part of listening to my feelings, and I feel a certain way, and I'm not going to pretend like I don't feel a certain way.
Well, that is going inside.
And I can't ignore it. It is the way I feel.
And so we're encouraging that in this company, because it is your truth and you have a right to your truth. And everyone out there has a right to their truth if you feel any sort of feeling that the rest of the world can't really swallow. That's part of the loneliness.
Yeah.
Right? And it's also, you're not alone at all, because ask any other griever. They're going to tell you that they have similar ribbons of the same feelings in different capacities, in different scenarios, in different lives, but same. So like, subscribe, join us. We're walking down a grief path. Not always easy to talk about all this stuff, but super powerful today, David. And I really appreciate you letting us get inside your brain.
Man, I want to look again.
Thank you so much for joining us today. I just am so thrilled to be able to offer you guys these steps. And no matter how difficult sometimes they are to walk through, right? None of the healing journey is ever without pain, without difficulty, without working spots. And so we're just so grateful that you took the opportunity to listen to these steps. And a reminder that if you're feeling a lot of feelings, or this triggered a lot of things, a lot of resources in the show notes. Not everything is going to be figured out, right, all at once. So work the steps, and if you're missing something in the step, you might notice you go back to the steps. So thank you so much for joining us in the second part of Wake the F Up, and healing from loss is a lifetime journey. So we appreciate you showing up, and we appreciate you for giving us your heart today.
If you enjoyed this episode of Wake the F Up, please like and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Join the Wake community by downloading our app. Just search for The Wake Wellness in the Apple or Android App Store, and follow us on Instagram at The Wake Wellness. Thanks for listening.